Oh my goodness, somebody definitely needs to call PC Building 911 for this build because it needs some help. Hi, welcome back to PC Builder. I'm Jason. That's right, it's Boost My Build Again time. This is a series where we take your PC part picker list, we tear them up, we put them back together, and we massively increase your performance. We've got Ryzen 7000 build. We look at a Ryzen 5800X 3D build. We'll take a look at what do you need to do if you're looking to spend less than $1,000 and have an amazing 1440p gaming PC. Remember, if you get value out of the video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel. And of course, subscribe and click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. With that, let's jump into it. Before that, this video is sponsored by Deepcool and their new LT all-in-one liquid CPU coolers with a unique infinity mirror pump head. If you're looking for a clean and distinctive aesthetic that's easy to install, then you should check out the Deepcool LT AIO in 240 or 360 millimeter versions. The updated pump design increases both power and efficiency. Customize the pump head ARGB and enjoy a simple and secure installation. Take your PC build to the next level with a Deepcool LT AIO Cooler using the links in the video description below. All right, we've got E. E just says, boost my build, Jason. It's a gaming rig. They only play Call of Duty and they have $2,000 to spend. But the reason I'm checking this one out is Rogue Demon says, I can tell that Jason picked this one for the video. So this must be an especially crazy build. Let's take a look at it. Oh my goodness. Yes, somebody definitely needs to call PC Building 911 for this build because it needs some help. Yes, you did a pretty good job making sure that everything's going to be compatible with each other. The challenge in this build is you haven't balanced the power right, and we've got a super powerful CPU with a completely weak GPU, and we've got the wrong monitor. We'll go through all that, but let's first take a step back. $1,758 is where you came out, and what you have there is you've got the Ryzen 9 5900X. This is a very powerful production-oriented CPU. I wouldn't really consider this a gaming CPU anymore. Definitely not with a 5800X 3D, Ryzen 7000, a 13th gen Intel out there. There's a lot of better choices here for our money. And then of course you went with the Radeon RX 5500 XT. I'm just very confused here. You cannot buy this card brand new. Now maybe you're thinking you're going to buy it used because yes, miners are selling these off. These were actually pretty decent mining cards, but this is only like an RX 580 kind of 1080p medium settings level of graphics card. On the NVIDIA side, I compare it to the GTX 1650 Super, but not a great graphics card. Now, if you're looking to buy this used, it just doesn't really match with the, overpowered CPU. So taking a step back, how do we build the best gaming PC that we can build? Well, if you haven't watched our best CPU GPU combo video, we go through this in great detail. I'll leave a link to that down in the video description. Let me give you the nutshell version. You want to buy the fastest GPU you can, and then make sure to get a CPU that's not going to bottleneck it. So that's your balance right there, but always leaning much more heavily in favor of the GPU for now and that CPU that's not going to bottleneck it. So looking at the rest of the build, we've got the 120 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler. I've railed against 120 millimeter all-in-one liquid coolers in the past. My problem with them is that they tend to be too expensive for the performance that they deliver. It's almost as much as a 240 millimeter, which I would prefer to see here, or getting a power air cooler, an AK620 here from Deepcool or the Scythe Fuma 2 are both cheaper than this, and they deliver significantly more performance. I like the motherboard B550 Tomahawk, good board, upgraded audio on it, upgraded other features. 169, a little bit more than I'd like to spend, but honestly, not that bad. You went with 4 by 8 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 CL16 memory. Now, the memory is so cheap. DDR4 is just so cheap right now. It only costs you $90 to do that, which to me is totally insane. That being said, we may be better off here by going with a single kit of 3600 CL16 memory instead, especially if we're going to push a lot of frames at 1080p or 1440p. We've got hard drives in this build, and now I'm just going to assume because there's no price in here that you're dragging this hard drive from a previous build. It probably has all your files and stuff on it. You just haven't had time to get them off. So that's fine. I'm going to assume that this is just kind of baggage that we're dragging with us. But I don't understand the Samsung 840 EVO. It's a 250 gigabyte SSD. I don't even know that they really sell it anymore. This is probably some third-party seller on Amazon, $150. You would definitely not buy this now. And I'm also confused by the storage. Now you have 2 of these drives, 2 1 terabyte drives. The motherboard only has the 2 M.2 slots, and you're going to fill both of them up. I would much rather see us go with a 2 terabyte drive and leave one of those drives open for future expansion. The case is fine, not my favorite case in the world, but the power supply, I mean, wow, this is like mega massive overkill. This is like hitting an ant with a sledgehammer, basically, 1,000 watt EVGA P2. These are great power supplies, by the way. They're A-tier rated. We used the 1600 or the 1300 watt version in our Ryzen 7900X launch day build, which was really really, really great. Definitely not something you need for this. So overall, for $1,758, including the monitor, I just feel like you've lost a lot of performance on the table, and you deserve a better system for Call of Duty, either Warzone or Modern Warfare 2 when it comes out. I called this the ultimate 1440p Call of Duty gaming PC for $2,000. As just a second ago, it was $2,000, but then it changed to $1,926 because the CPU suddenly went on sale. In fact, a lot of AMD CPUs, as I was filming this, just had their prices cut. So we'll go through that in just a second. But I really want to start off with the graphics card because, again, where do we focus our efforts on a gaming PC? And we're going to get you a graphics card. Now, there's a little caveat here. I have in here as a placeholder the ASRock Phantom Gaming D Radeon RX 6900 XT. This would be a phenomenal graphics card, even at $669. Give you great 1440p performance. So why am I calling this a placeholder? Well, it just so happens that in about a week and a half, AMD is going to announce its Radeon 7000 series of graphics cards. I do expect them to fill out this price bracket with a card that is faster than the 6900 XT. Now, I expect the 6900 XT and some of the 6000 series cards to see cuts in those areas that they're going to kind of, backfill anyway. That being said, if AMD doesn't make the smart decision and come in with Radeon 7000 series cards that you would put in here instead, this still could be a good option. For the CPU, regardless of what GPU we get, the Ryzen 7 5800X 3D is an absolute gaming monster. You only game. If you did something else, I probably would have looked at like a 13600K or maybe like a 7700X instead. That being said, they just cut the price of this from $400, which is what I was going to have you pay for it, to $329. If you're able to cash in on that, great deal, fantastic. If not, even at $400, makes a lot of sense in this build. Super, super fast, and will power this gaming PC now and into the future. For the cooler, I went with id Cooling Zoom Flow. I really do like this cooler. It tends to be one of the lower cost ones. Looks really nice. It's 240 millimeter all-in-one liquid cooler, and it'll give you great thermals for the 5800X 3D for only $10 more than you were going to get a 120 millimeter. Now, if you like Cooler Master instead, they have some alternative good coolers. They just tend to be a little bit more expensive, another $10, $15. Stuck it out with your motherboard. For the memory, I went with 16 gigabytes, so 2x8 gigabyte kit of DDR4 3600CL16. I just think for the super high frame rates, we're going to try and push at 1440p, as we'll go through in just a moment. I think the 3600 speed memory might help you a little bit with this level of performance if you're going to turn down those settings to like low settings to push super high frame rates. I left your hard drive in here. I'm just going to assume you're dragging it from another build. But for the SSD, for the M.2, I went ahead and went with another very good budget M.2 NVMe drive, this time a 2 terabyte one. And it just happens that the Silicon Power A60 is on sale right now, $120. About the same performance as the Z330 that you had in there. That's another drive that I often recommend. These are good budget drives, but if you want something higher performance, you certainly can get it. But 2 terabytes for $120, M.2 is pretty insane. For the case, I just got you a case that has a PSU shroud. I think it's just gonna clean up the build a little bit, and it's got ARGB on it. The case market is still really terrible right now. I think in a bad case market that this is one of the kind of hidden gems. It's a deep cool CK560. In fact, we're gonna do a build in one of these, 3 ARGB fans in front. And unlike a lot of cases that just don't come with a fan, at least it comes with even a non-ARGB fan in the rear. So you can decide to replace it if you want, and if you don't want to, just go with what's there. For the power supply, we went with an actual ASUS ROG Strix 1000 watt power supply. This is gonna be a great unit for you. I'm super excited about it. Only $150 though. For the monitor, we're gonna go with a Gigabyte M27Q-P. This was our #1 budget 1440p gaming monitor recommendation in our recent video from just a month or two ago. And we absolutely love the performance of it. 170 hertz, got a great color gamut on it. It's got the KVM switches. This is just a really, really phenomenal gaming monitor. If you can get this at Newegg right now for $250, that would be great. But even at $279, $299, if you get it on Amazon or whatever, still a phenomenal deal and phenomenal performance. So overall, for $1,926 or $2,000 if you don't get the deal on the 5800X 3D, you're gonna get a gaming PC capable of pushing huge amounts of frames at 1440p and a gaming CPU that's not gonna bottleneck either this one or the next GPU you get. We've upped your memory speed, we upped your cooling on this. We got you a better case and a better power supply, I think better power supply deal, as well as that 1440p gaming monitor. So I hope you feel like your build is boosted. We've got Curefeld. Curefeld's in Australia. They have a budget of $3,500 Australian. That's about $2,300 US. And they want to make sure that they're going to get something that has a good upgrade path. They're running mining industry software. Now, I'm assuming you mean geological mining because there's a lot of spatial mapping, huge multi-threaded workload types of software out there for that. And they also want to play games, mostly Minecraft. So you're really into mining, like in geological mining terms. Okay, color and contrast take priority over refresh rate. They want to fit the AIO in the top, and they're confused about the RAM and whether to get AMD or NVIDIA. All right, we've got our first Ryzen 7000 build for Boost My Build. Now, obviously we did one for the channel on the launch, did the 7900X gaming and video editing build, absolute beast of a build. That being said, the platform is quite expensive, although the prices of that is coming down right now. Speaking of prices, I see that you're already over your budget. We got 4,077 Aussie dollars. You wanted to be at 3,500 Aussie dollars. Remember, that's about $2,300 US. And I'm seeing some things in here that I know are going to cause us issues, and I'm also questioning our price to performance. Let's start off with the price to performance elements. Now, you got the Ryzen 9 7950X, total beast of a CPU. And frankly, in our 7900X review, we mused that why would you buy the 7900X to spend a little bit extra money and get the 7950X if you're going to invest in the platform cost. So I don't necessarily mind that, but I'm wondering if this level of Ryzen is even necessary for us right now. I know we want future upgradability. We're going to get that with AM5. I'm just questioning buying such an expensive processor on what is really kind of a mid-range budget. For the cooler, you're going to have some problems. I absolutely love the AIO 280, and there's no problem with the cooler itself. In fact, it's a fantastic model, but the problem you're going to have is that the Lian Li Landcool 215 will not top mount it. You're saying, Jason, but it says in the specs. I don't care what the specs say. We tried to top mount a 280 in this thing. We could not get it in there all day in our Ryzen 5950X build. Watch the video. We go through it. It was very frustrating. Now listen, if you're willing to get your drill out and drill in some additional holes, you can probably make it fit. And I almost did that. That being said, I did decide to go ahead and front mount it. And with the front 200mm fans and those two 140mm fans, it was an amazing push-pull setup, and that thing runs so cool. For the motherboard, I like the Gigabyte B650 Aorus Pro X. It's one of the boards that we recommended you take a look at depending on pricing in your region. It's got upgraded audio on the board. Overall, great rear panel connectivity. It's got Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, kind of all the features you'd want in a board that you're planning to upgrade at least once, maybe twice in the future. For the memory, you went all out. You got DDR5 6000 CL30 memory. This is like the stuff that AMD sent us to review. It's absolutely great memory. Don't get me wrong. I'm just questioning the cost. Now, we went with 32 gigabytes. Mostly that's because there are not many 2x8 gigabyte kits. I almost feel like we're being forced into 32 gigabytes, even if we don't need it. That being said, for the workloads you're doing, I'm questioning whether or not we should consider 64 gigs of memory here instead, maybe at a slower speed. We went with a kind of expensive drive, Samsung 980 Pro, but only 1 terabyte of space. And I feel like this is one of the areas where we're a little bit shortchanging our build. We could have probably gone for PCIe Gen 3 storage and gotten a lot more of it. The big problem I have with our build right now in terms of power is the GPU. We went with the RTX 3060 Ti and the 7950X, and it just seems like not necessarily a great combination of power. I feel like we've massively undersized our GPU while kind of maybe oversizing our CPU. So I just think this is something we need to take a look at. Power supply is great. MSI MPG 1000 watt power supply. We used it in our best PSU video as the demonstration unit, so definitely check that out. And then for the monitor, look, I'm mostly focused on gaming monitors in terms of color correct and color accurate monitors for professional workloads that need that kind of stuff. The Asus ProArt display, everything that I've seen is this is one of the better displays in that regard, although it is only 75 hertz. Now you're only playing Minecraft, so maybe 75 hertz, not a big deal. Overall, for 4,077 Aussie dollars, I just feel like not only have we overshot our budget, but we haven't really put our power in the right places, and we've left some of the key important areas underfunded. I called this the $2,200 Ryzen 7700X gaming and productivity system. Now it's $2,200 USD, $3,443 Australian. I think your big challenge is you want this like super ultra productivity build, but you don't quite have the budget for that. So our job is to how can we get you what you need at that same budget level and make sure that we're not shortchanging other areries of the build. I went with the Ryzen 7700X here. Now, if you do find some extra money, you can just throw in a bigger CPU here. We've actually set up the whole build so that it wouldn't be that if 7900X would be fine, 7950X if you decided ultimately to just go ahead and dump in the extra 600 Aussie dollars. But I think the 7700X is going to be absolutely amazing. This is a super powerful CPU. People say, oh, Jason, it's only 8 cores, 16 threads. You know, the 1390 900K build beats it. Yeah, but what else really beats it other than that? Now you could go 13th gen Intel here, but I know you wanted AM5 in order to be able to upgrade in the future. That's why I went with the 7700X here. I went with the EKO 240 because this will fit, and honestly, it's all the cooling the 7700X needs. You can actually run the 7700X in eco mode and you won't get those crazy high thermals. Now, those crazy high thermals are not really an issue. I know people are like freaking out about that. Probably do a whole video when we do our cooling for Ryzen 7000 video. That being said, this is all the cooler you really need. I changed out your motherboard, the MSI B650 Tomahawk Wi-Fi, just better deal right now for the same feature set. I think as these boards filter into the market, you're just gonna have to check your local market out there. Maybe the Gigabyte board will be better. Sometimes maybe the MSI will be better in other markets. So again, another board we absolutely recommend. Great audio, very, very same feature set as the Gigabyte. I did dial back on that super expensive memory kit. Now, if you decide you want to spend the money, you can go ahead and grab it. I decided to go with a 32 gigabyte kit of DDR5 5600 CL36. I think, and look, I know we have not done much memory testing with Ryzen. So this is a lot of this at this stage. Any of these Ryzen or 13th gen Intel build stuff that we're doing is mostly guesswork at this point, but that's part of being an early adopter, is that you just have to take your best guess on some of this stuff. If you want to be certain, you're gonna have to wait a year or two until we do tons and tons of testing. So I think this kit will do absolutely fine for you. But again, if you want to spend the extra money on the other kit, you can. We just needed to come down under your budget. For the drive, I just went with a cheaper PCIe Gen 3 drive, and I got 2 terabytes because I just feel like you're going to need the space over the speed. I checked out the workloads that you do. It doesn't seem like there's any huge amount of writes to them. So I don't really think we need Gen 4 speed. I think what we need is more storage overall. For the GPU, I bumped you up to an RTX 3070. Here's the big problem in Australia is that RTX cards are way overpriced, and I'm not really sure how to get around that. Now, you could go AMD here and you could get a much bigger GPU, but that being said, most productivity work, NVIDIA just has a lock on it. Now, AMD's Radeon 7000 series of GPUs may change that. We'll have to see. We have like another week and a half until AMD announces that. I really hope that they do close the gap. Now, the gap isn't in the cards themselves, it's in the support that they provide to third-party applications. This is video editing suites. This is all kinds of professional suites. I'm really hoping they clean a lot of that up for the Radeon 7000 series cards so that they become much more competitive with NVIDIA. We stuck it out with your case, we stuck it out with your power supply, and we stuck it out with that same monitor. So for $3,443, we right-sized your system, we gave you future upgradability, and I think we gave you a lot more storage that you're gonna need for your professional workloads and whatever you do on Minecraft. So I hope you feel like your build is boosted. We've got Kelvin. Kelvin, this is the first time submitting, long-time watcher. They play AAA games like Starfield, Assassin's Creed, Horizon Zero Dawn, and they've got a 1440p 144 Hz monitor, but their current PC just isn't cutting the mustard anymore. Their budget's between $900 and $1,000. They want to go with a white RGB look, but performance is king, and they're very excited to see what we can do. Let's see what you got. Okay, overall, pretty good submission. I do see one critical error and one error that's costing us quite a bit of price to performance, maybe 2 actually as I look at it here. Actually, as I look at it, maybe 3. So for $1,023, now you're already over your budget and you said $900 to $1,000. I think this is like a B in terms of performance, A in terms of effort, B in terms of performance. I think we can get this to an A+ though in terms of price to performance for the FPS. You went with the Ryzen 5600, great CPU. AMD just recently slashed prices on like all of their Ryzen 5500, 5600, 5600X, 5800X 3D lineup, $140 right now. This is really tough to beat. The one challenge you're gonna have with the 5600, you gotta make sure, because it didn't come out that long ago, that you get a motherboard that has BIOS flashback on it. Otherwise, you're taking a gamble with some of the boards that don't have BIOS flashback that it won't work. You've combined it with the ASRock B550 Steel Legend, which is an absolutely great motherboard in terms of feature set, except for one feature it's missing, and it's been really the killer on all the ASRock B550 and X570 boards, except for their Tai Chi, which does have it, but that's the super high end. And that's that these boards don't have BIOS flashback on them. That was a major mistake by ASRock. Otherwise, I would have recommended these boards till the cows come home because they've got great price to performance for them. great overall features, but at this point, they will definitely work with like the 5600X, the original CPUs that came out, but the newest ones, the 5800X 3D and like the 5600, probably you're taking a big gamble for it. And if you lose that gamble, you're gonna end up getting stuck with a board you really can't use. The memory, I like the memory. DDR4 3600 CL18, all white, team group. I have a kit of this sitting next to me, 16 gigabyte overall. Now remember, 3600 CL18, same speed essentially as the 3200 CL16. That being said, I already checked, $65 is a great price for this kit. Another big mistake I think we made, and I think maybe this is just an accident, maybe you thought this was a 1 terabyte drive when you selected it, but it is in fact a 500 gigabyte drive for $95. Yikes, that's very expensive. And you said, Jason, but in your best SSD video from last year, you recommended the SN550. What happened? How come this drive sucks so bad? Well, the problem is that Western Digital appears to have retired this drive in favor of the newer SN570. So it looks like what's going on here is they've stopped manufacturing it, and what often happens is the last couple units end up selling for a stupid amount of price for some reason. So what you're looking for here is 1 terabyte, and you're probably only looking to spend about $60 to $70 total, not $95 for a budget level NVMe. Another thing that I don't absolutely love about this build is we went with a Radeon RX 6700 non-XT GPU. Now, in the limited amount of testing that I've seen of this GPU, and there's not that many models out there, it trades blows with the 6650 XT, which is the amped up version of the 6600 XT that's right now you can get for about $275, which is $75 cheaper than the $349 you've got here. So I don't love the performance, and I don't love, you can spend another $20 or $30 and we could get the XT model, which does quite a bit better. Case, I like the case fractal focus too. Now just note that this down here, this is not a PSU shroud. This is just kind of like a little guard, if you will. So if you're actually looking slightly higher than the case, you will see the cables, you will see the PSU. This is basically an updated version of their Focus G case, which again, didn't have a PSU shroud. And then the power supply, $120 for 750 watts, a lot to spend. We could do a lot better. And honestly, 750 watts, that's massive overkill for what we're trying to do here. So for $1,023, I think we came close to the mark. I see a couple of critical things that may prevent the build from even working, and a couple other mistakes that are holding our FPS back. You deserve more FPS, and we can get it for you. Okay, I called this the $1,000 amazing 1440p white themed gaming PC because I think you're gonna get amazing performance for less than $1,000. In fact, as currently constituted, we finished at $936. I will say you're starting to get into the price range for graphics cards, and we'll go through this in just a second, where you're probably gonna wanna see what AMD announces. You might wanna consider spending just a little bit more than your budget if AMD announces a really high performance card in about the $500 range. But let's jump into the build. We start off with the Ryzen 5600X, currently selling for $159. That's an incredible price. I went with the 5600X because it gives you more performance. The price was just cut by AMD, and it's gonna work, I believe, with your ASRock B550 Steel Legend motherboard. The great news is that I have bought at least one of these ASRock B550 Steel Legend motherboards, and it did come with a BIOS that will work with the 5600X as well as the original Ryzen 5000 CPUs. And that was over a year ago, so I feel very confident that we're gonna see you be able to use this with the 5600X. For the cooler, I did swap out your cooler for the id Cooling SE214 XT, slightly smaller and slightly lower performance cooler than the Vetru V5, which is almost double the price. So if you want that extra performance, feel free to throw that one back in. I'm just trying to squeeze every dollar I can to make this as best price to performance as we can, and this is still very adequate. We stuck it out with your memory, but for the drive, I swapped out the horribly overpriced, because it's being pushed out, drive for a Silicon Power A60 1 terabyte for $58 for 1 terabyte. Totally insane what NVMe prices are going for right now. For the GPU, we went up to the Radeon RX 6700 XT. Now it happens to be right now that this one's on special for $350, the same price you were gonna pay for the 6700 non-XT. That being said, the other models are about $30 to $40 more. That's why I didn't come all the way up to $1,000. I've left you some room in the budget if some of the prices change between when I'm filming this, because it seems like everything's on super sale right now. That being said, 6700 XT, quite a bit more performance than the 6700 6700 non-XT, and you may even have enough money in the budget to get a 6750 XT, which I would recommend. But remember, we're still in that range where I would wait to see what AMD announces on November 3rd. For the power supply, we just went with a relatively cheap C-tier rated unit, which is Thermaltake Tough Power GX2. Remember to consult the PSU Cultist list before you buy any power supply. It's just kind of typical 80 plus gold certified units, not modular. I think with the case that you got, the Fractal Design Focus 2, and having this little shield here at the bottom, I think you can clean up the cables a point with this would look like a really, really nice build. That being said, if you want to spend a little bit of your money on the case instead, you could look at getting something like the Fantex Eclipse G360A. This is a great case. In fact, I just got one. We're going to do a build in one, and it's got 3 ARGB fans in front, comes with a non-ARGB fan in the rear for $99 after rebate at Newegg right now. I did go ahead and throw in an id cooling fan for you. This is for the rear exhaust. We definitely want a rear exhaust fan, at least one. This is only $15. Good. These are good fans, good quality. If you want to get a Fractal one to match the ones in the front, you certainly can. I believe they're like $22, $25 instead. So for $936, we've upgraded your CPU to slightly faster CPU. We've made sure it's actually compatible with your motherboard. We've upgraded that storage to 1 terabyte at a very reasonable price. And we pushed that 6700 non-XT up to a 6700 XT, possibly a 6750 XT, or maybe even one of the new AMD cards going to be announced on November 3rd. So I hope you feel like your build is boosted. Remember, if you got value out of the video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe and click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool content. Now, if you missed our best Ryzen 7000 motherboard guide or best Intel 13th gen motherboard guide, check them out right here. Whether or not you're thinking of building Intel or Ryzen 7000 right now, check out what your options are. And we'll catch you on the next one.